Thank you, Dr. Goldberg and Dr. Drucker, and especially your comment on unapologetically ambitious. Your collaboration is a great example to us all. And thank you to the Knights and the Boyles and other generous philanthropists who have accelerated your work and the possibilities for Oregon and our leadership across the country. I would now like to introduce Oregon State Professor of Robotics and co-founder and Chief Robot Officer of Agility Robotics, Jonathan Hurst.
Okay, hi everybody. I really appreciate being able to be here and talk to you today. I've got a few ideas, and robotics and AI, of course, is really becoming a big deal. And it's not just a made-up big deal, it's actually becoming a big deal. So this is my robot, and I'll talk about this a little bit. This is the robot that Agility Robotics is building, and I'm going to talk about AI and robotics. But I want to start with kind of a simple plot, okay? Now, this came out on the internet a little while ago and really made an impact on me. It shows the value of companies and the number of job openings. And typically those things track, and you can see they diverged at one point. And there's a lot of questions. Why did that happen? And it's probably complicated, but this is quite an interesting coincidence. ChatGPT was released right at that point of divergence. And it's not just ChatGPT. There are a whole bunch of different AI tools that are all of a sudden starting to be really productive and coming online. And I wanted to point out to everybody that AI is already starting to change the world in a really, really big way, but it is just in its infancy. It is just getting started. So the impacts of this are truly like an industrial revolution kind of thing, but compressed and gonna happen so much faster. So the only question that we need to ask is not, is this good or is this bad or what do I think? That's sort of irrelevant. The question is, how are we going to make use of this? How is Oregon going to benefit the most from this, and how can we use it to our advantage? I think an important thing to keep in mind is that AI and robotics are not their own entities. They're not a separate field. It is something that is going to underpin all businesses. And much like the way in the late 90s or maybe the year 2000, we had internet companies. Today we have AI companies, but today we don't have internet companies anymore. Everybody uses the internet. You have to use the internet to be in business. That is also going to be true of AI and robotics. And AI is often talked about because that's the things that are starting to occur a lot right now, but that's kind of a brain in a box. You can look at your phone, you can get information, you can organize information, you can do images, but once AI is actually applied to doing physical work in the world is when it really starts to have its impact. When it starts to actually become the entire future of labor and change our human interaction with productivity and the world, this is a big deal, and I'm not exaggerating here. Now, I'm going to talk about humanoids because that's what our company builds, but that's a very tiny subset of really, I want you to understand the big tent here of robotics and automation and AI and how it's going to be across the board. So. This image on the tall one is a photograph of our robot. That's a Digit. And Digit basically picks up bins and puts them somewhere else. That's it. It's a very boring job, which is perfect for a robot, right? But we do expect that to gradually grow over time into less and less structured environments, more and more varied environments, eventually into homes and things like that. But it will be a long time, and there are many multi-hundred-billion-dollar markets on the way there that robots like this are going to be useful for. To set the scale a little bit, right? We know smartphones are a really big market, but that's pretty small compared to, say, the automotive market, which is also pretty small to what analysts are predicting just the humanoid market is going to be in 25 years. And remember, the humanoid market is a small sliver of robotics and the broader AI impact in the world. So I just really want to set the scale here, and also this is not just one analyst, it's many analysts, it's the venture capital industry, it's a lot of people starting to recognize this impact. So Agility Robotics, we are in Salem, Oregon. We spun out of Oregon State University, where my lab started doing the research that led to this company. Our vision is to reinvent labor. We're starting simple with moving bins and totes, but plan to build this out more and more. And we want to lead the adoption of humanoid robots across industries. This is an image of Digit at a GXO warehouse in Georgia, and this is the first commercially deployed humanoid robot to do physical work and get paid for doing that work on a regular basis. That's a historical moment. People in 20 or 30 years look back and say, what were the first humanoids? Well, this is the first one that actually did any physical, useful work. It was more than an animatronic or more than a mannequin that moves, something like that. Here it is in an Amazon warehouse, moving bins and totes. Here it is at a Scheffler plant, moving bins full of parts that are a little bit oily through a washing machine. This is the kind of thing that Digit does today. And we have tens of robots deployed. We're kind of at the cusp of beginning to deploy hundreds and thousands and grow from there. This is the beginning. So where did this come from? How did we get here, right? This started with research. This started at the university. This started with some scientific questions of how can we understand how animals move and then figure out how to make robots that can behave like animals. They're very different things. Typically, robots are position control devices. Think of like a CNC machine as like a robot. But if you accidentally make contact, like the tool runs into the table, it's going to be a bad day and things are going to break. But people are very different. People are very flexible and back-drivable and are very good about applying forces and not actually such high precision, but that means humans are really good at things like assembly, things that robots typically can't do today. So that's the research focus. Once we solve some of those research things at the university, we spun out the company. And the question now is different. It's not how can we make humans, robots move like humans, it's how can we solve a problem for our customers? How can we, what's the business model that is now possible once we've solved some of these science questions? And then here's kind of a parallel story, or a parallel picture of the path to getting there, right? I came to Oregon State as the very first roboticist. When I Googled Oregon State robotics, there was really literally nothing. But it was extremely fertile ground. And the thing that brought me here was ETIC, which was a state funding that allowed them to hire a first robotics person to roll the dice a little bit. And then in around 2010, we had a big economic downturn, but we had support from voters that supported the university, that allowed us to hire when others couldn't, and actually get to a critical mass of world-class roboticists to start to build a robotics program. And that grew. And with my colleague, Con Toomer, and others, we started the robotics PhD and master's program, and only the third organization in the country to do that, after Carnegie Mellon and Georgia Tech. So we were ahead of the game, and we had some very, very high-quality students. For 11 PhD positions, over 600 applicants from around the world. So it's very popular, and it's been really, really successful. Now, we funded Agility in 2015 after DARPA-funded and university-supported research, successfully going to the DARPA Robotics Challenge, and then started to really get some attention. And you can see there's our robot Cassie in front of Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin rocket at the Amazon Mars conference, and they sat me next to Jeff Bezos for dinner that night when they invited me there. So we've gotten some attention, we're on the world stage, and we're really doing our best to make a big difference in the world. We've done well. Thank you. Yeah, Time magazine, right? Currently, we have about 300 employees. We've raised over $300 million in goings. And a lot of that is spent locally in Oregon. We hire a lot of machine shops. We have a lot of local suppliers. Of course, all of our employees are buying homes and things, and these are engineers, well-paid engineers, and growing commercial investments. So we're building this. But it's not perfect, right? So we talked a little bit about this morning about some of our challenges, and we've seen these challenges. The growth of AI and robotics in Oregon is absolutely constrained. And I can give you the example that we've experienced, but I believe this applies more broadly to AI and robotics. Why are we struggling to grow in Oregon? The primary #1 reason that trumps everything else is that the workforce doesn't exist. As we hire more senior, more experienced people as our company grows, and we need senior managers and leadership and executives, there are not any in Oregon who have had this experience before, who have done these kinds of things before. I'm the only executive in Oregon Our CEO is in San Diego. Our CFO is in Seattle. Our commercial person is in New York. Our CTO is in Pittsburgh. So we've had to recruit and hire where the talent exists. And to give you an example of how hard we've tried, I needed to hire a VP of engineering, and we spent over a year and over $100,000 on executive recruiters and searched everywhere and everybody and everything we could. And I feel confident we basically combed through everybody who was possibly qualified. And we ended up with a California employee who was willing to travel here now and then. We couldn't find anybody willing to move here, and we certainly couldn't find anybody close to qualified in Oregon for this role. There's no ecosystem, right? So candidates don't want to relocate. They know if it doesn't work out at Agility or they want to move up to something else, there's nowhere else they can go. They will have to move again. That's one of the big challenges. So we are growing faster in San Jose and in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And this is not because I want to. This is because we are forced to do this for the survival of the business. So, I've had the chance to meet with Senator Wyden and observe a couple of town halls. And one of the things he said that I really like is, everybody comes and complains with problems, and they say, okay, he says, how can the machinery of the federal government help to solve this problem? And, in other words, what can we do? What are some ideas about how we can actually address this? And that's what I've come with today, is at least an idea. I'm telling you that an educated workforce is not enough. I went and looked at the demographics of our master's and PhD students who have graduated from our very excellent robotics program. Most of them have had to leave the state. Almost 3/4 of them have had to leave the state to find work in this field. We need an experienced workforce, right? We need to be able to hire somebody who has been a manager of other engineers working on AI, working on robotics for 5, 10 years of their career, even 3 years of their career. Who's going to be looking for the next role, but in their company it's not there, and so we do some cross-pollination, and people are moving to different roles around companies. This is necessary. You have to have an ecosystem of businesses in roughly the same field. A small example of this is the UAV industry in the Columbia River Gorge, which is really wonderful. And a big example, I was just visiting Taiwan, the Industrial Technology Research Institute there. They've been there for 40 years, and one of the companies you've all heard of is TSMC, but there's also hundreds of small to medium businesses. This has basically bootstrapped the economy of an entire country. Taiwan is full of companies that have spun out of this effort, of this research and development effort. And by the way, they're willing to help us. They're willing to share what they've done. They're willing to advise. They're very excited to share. So how do we grow that? How do we build that here? How do we create something in Oregon around robotics and AI, right? I think that we need to create an AI and robotics startup factory, basically, because we need to grow it here. It's a brand new field. There don't exist a lot of experienced people in the world with this. People are gaining experience as they do it. We are not likely to recruit people away from the Bay Area to move their companies here to do this. But there are a lot of people here, a lot of talent. We talked about talent here. We need to develop that talent, and we can develop that talent. And I've observed that at the university as people grow. Now, I love this logo, and it is appropriately AI generated. But I'm thinking about this analogy, right? Like a biological system needs air to thrive. The future business ecosystem is going to require AI and robotics. And so this touches all industries. I mean, I imagined if you're at actually Portland Casting Company, that's not necessarily a place you would think of as super high-tech robotics. They require this. They're an example of someone who's going to need sanding and grinding and a hard thing for robots to do that's going to use some real intelligence and perception, a lot of AI and robotics. But pretty much everybody does, obviously in medical fields as well. So how do we do that? First, we need to establish the anchor. And I think that partnering with Oregon State University, the state's largest university, and of course home to the AI programs and robotics programs, and home to the world's largest university supercomputer at the Wong Collaborative Innovation Complex. When that opens, it makes a lot of sense, right? And obviously this is very different from a traditional educational effort. This is not that. But economic impact is core to the purpose of a land-grant university, and the university is all in on this and very excited about this and very interested to work on this. We need to make sure we have statewide cooperation and collaboration. It's necessary because it crosses industries. We need to build something that everybody wants. This is what an AI thinks that collaboration across the state looks like. I swear I recognize a couple of people in there. Maybe it was trained on pictures off the internet, so. We need to build the infrastructure for this. This needs a sub-campus. This is not the same thing as an academic building. This is a sub-campus with some different rules, some different goals, adjacent to and related to the university, but focused on startups rather than classrooms. We need leaders, the right people doing this. These are professors of practice or instructors or people who are not necessarily academics, but people who have been through the journey of starting a company and want to be giving back. There are a lot of people out there, and I think these will come out of the woodwork, and already 3 or 4 have, who really want to leave the ladder behind them and help others achieve the same success that they have. And this creates then this startup assembly line, right? The whole purpose of this is build 50, 100 new businesses every year. Every single undergraduate student or graduate student or certificate program, whoever is participating in this starts a business. That is the goal and the purpose of it. And, you know, every year I would expect 10% of those to be successful in some way, small to medium businesses, and a few are going to be these breakout successes. And something like this, there's a real chance of building a Qualcomm or a Microsoft or a Google or an Amazon. I would not bank on that or guarantee it, but this is certainly how you play that lottery, is helping create an environment where something like that can grow and can be created. So over 10 years, we need to have 200 to 300 companies creating this ecosystem that actually allows this cross-pollination, that allows this whole thing to grow across Oregon. And for us to participate in this and really be part of the AI and robotics revolution that is coming. This is not something that one entity can do. This is an all or nothing. All of the stakeholders in the state need to participate in this. It needs to be private philanthropy. It needs to be state support. It needs to be federal support. It needs to be voters. Just like voters supported the ability of us to build our robotics program. I don't think that was necessarily the direct intention, but it was one of the results that allowed us to do that. Each of these groups has a different role to play and a different way to support this. And also they have their own needs and wants and preferences for what it should be. And so it needs to be shaped according to that. And I'll just land there. We do need to build this foundation of tomorrow's world economy. This is the foundation of tomorrow's world economy. We can do it in Oregon. It's going to grow where it is planted today. And we have that opportunity. So thank you for listening. All right.